the road to that goal. Of course, this is all under the umbrella of the region's intensifying climate agenda, and we have COP27 in Egypt really just around the corner. My name is Michelle Meinecke. I'm the Director of the Energy Transition Dialogues here at Gulf Intelligence, and I'm very glad that we have three excellent speakers with us today, lifting the lid on what's going to happen next. First, we have Riyad Bustani, the founder and GM of EcoSquare. Welcome back, Riyad. Thank you for joining us again. Which story really jumps out at you on that list, or stories that there's some good meat in there?
Yeah, that definitely a lot of very interesting topics here. So it was difficult for me to select, but I would say 5 and 6 together, I was like very interested to focus on. And I see those like circular economy pushed in the Philippines with a waste crisis. And the fact that we all know this, which is like the very low level of recyclability of many wastes, including plastic. And I see those two elements as a loss of opportunity rather than something negative, because there is a potential there to increase drastically the rate of recyclability for all the waste. And the fact that we are in a waste crisis, or the fact that we know already that the level is very low, is definitely going to push governments all around the world, including in this part of the world, where we have a lot of waste which is not really recycled or mismanaged, as the title mentions. So this really brings a lot of business opportunities to develop whether organic or non-organic waste to be managed in a better way, in a really circular economy way.
Indeed. I mean, 300 million tons of plastic waste are generated worldwide every year, which is, one of the estimates said that's equivalent to the weight of the entire human population, which is about 7.8 billion people. And you start thinking of it in that sort of way, and you know, in terms of our consumption rates, we need 1.5 Earths if we're going to continue. And these are very vivid ways to start digesting the risk. And I like the way you put it there, the loss of opportunity, a positive twist on that. And we were at we had the Oman Energy Forum in January. And there was some sessions on circular economy there. And one of the recommendations from that was that the word waste should be eradicated, that if we're truly to embrace a circular economy, the word waste should no longer exist. We should go that far down the track that the absolute end product is still reused or regenerated in some way, so that waste is no longer a concept, which is very interesting. Thank you very much, Riyad. Aditya Shah, the head of circular economy at Greek Capital, welcome back as well. Which one jumps out at you, please?
So for me, it is 4 and 5 which jump out for me, and in many ways I feel that they're interrelated. I'll start with 5, just continuing with what Riyad said. This is a crisis facing not only Philippines, but most of the countries across the globe. So, and that's fundamental to the way waste, or resources, as we'd like to call them, are handled. So all of them, or most of the countries, are sending it to the landfill. Most of the countries don't even have sanitary landfills. Those are purely dump sites. So the environmental hazard around that is massive. And I think Dubai earlier this year took a step in the right direction in terms of diverting waste from the landfills. So, Dubai introduced a tipping fee from January. So there's a landfill fee, or a landfill tax, if you'd like to call that, which is charged on every ton of waste which gets sent. And, from the experience of a lot of other countries, we've seen that there's a very, very high correlation between the landfill fee and diversion of waste from landfills. So, once more countries start adopting that, we start seeing the value in the waste, and waste then becomes a resource, because one man's waste is another man's resource. So and you can see the impact immediately. So Dubai has a brand new material recovery facility which has been set up. The existing material recovery facilities are obviously doing a lot better, and then you have a waste to energy plant which then becomes a lot more efficient when you have a landfill fee which goes in. And extending that to point number 5, where businesses back plans to build them for recycling. This is the concept of extended producer responsibility, and something which is very, very important in terms of creating a circular economy. So you need to pass the responsibility back to the producer, and get into the polluter pays kind of principle. And this is a model which has been very, very successful, and especially in types of waste like, batteries or tires or, end of life vehicles. So, and, even plastics to a certain extent. So, if you are able to introduce extended producer responsibility and make the producers and the polluters of waste a lot more accountable than, the taxpayers or the government, then, there you have the push for a circular economy. So on the one hand, 5 acts as a pull, where you have incentives to invest, and number 4 acts as a push, where there is an onus, or there is a responsibility on the producers or the polluters to take care of the waste which is being generated.
Indeed, and whenever we start looking at what hits the balance sheet, the motivation to innovate and the motivation to diversify does naturally start to track up. It's the way our economy is built and our cultures are built. Meghna Lakhani, thank you for joining us. First time between you and I know you've been on before. Thank you very much. And Meghna is the founder and CEO of Optus App and One Modern World. Which one jumps out at you? I think you had a couple as well, didn't you?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. To me, directly, because they're related to both of my projects. One Modern World would be directly related to plastic label. It needs sustainability scale. Yes, I have wide knowledge on that. And I would say definitely it's very important now to emphasize to the users, to all the public in UAE, there's free door-to-door recycling services that comes to not only Dubai, it's already in Abu Dhabi, but there are so many new startups and apps available in the UAE for consumers to use, and most of them have the free option. So in the article, they're focused on recap. I've met Ronald and Jeremy, myself, and we're looking to do more projects together. But there's also another app, Reloop, and there's another app, and the Z-Loop as well. So there's 4 different recycling projects at the moment available in the UAE, which I believe they need to be taken more advantage of and need a lot more awareness about. And in terms of plastic labeling, businesses, as you know, are becoming more conscious about the single-use plastic, and they are trying to implement solutions in whichever way they can. I mean, obviously, we need to keep in mind the cost of the alternatives of plastic, but it's also important to have the correct labeling and the way that this has been recycled, or just informing the consumers of what are they exactly consuming and how to segregate this, or what are the consequences of each of these items. So it's very important to understand composting, what's recyclable, what needs industrial recycling, and so on.
And that really loops on to something we were talking about just before we went live, in terms of the importance of raising awareness about what circularity principles are. So raising awareness through society and businesses, in government, academia to a degree, but not as much, and trying to make it a far more common concept. Like recycling has become a very common concept over the last 10 years, and it's a familiarity that everybody's embraced to a relative degrees. And like you say, we've got the 4 apps now supporting it, and there's been this big surge. But how to make the true concept of circularity so familiar? Riyad, what do you think? Do you think this is really important for this year? Because we're really looking at what needs to be done this year to start building a much stronger foundation for a circular economy. And in its true form, a circular economy will change the way we live in every way. So it's not going to happen next year. Obviously, it's going to take decades. But how important is that education level for making that change this year?
Yeah, and you're definitely right. I mean, awareness is probably the first step, because this is where you see the involvement of people, whether you're an individual, you're a corporation, you're a government entity, to make sure that you set up the right infrastructure so that the circular economy makes sense, because it needs to make financial sense. If I have to summarize the key factors for success for circular economy, I would say there's what I call the 3 C's. It's first collaboration, then you have change of mindset, and then you have cost effectiveness. So if you are agreeing on all those three elements, collaboration means what? Basically partnership. And we've seen a lot of companies, even big corporation. We know that circular economy is not one person, one company, one organization job. It's basically, as we said before, the waste of one is the resource of the other one. So there needs to have collaborations between big corporations. And I've been reading some articles lately. I've seen so many announcements from companies like Veolia and Solvay in France, where they are planning to have an RDF plant, which is a solid fuel. Another one with Total Energy and Honeywell in Spain. They were planning to have a plastic recycling facility. And even here in the region, recently there was an announcement between Delsco and an Irish company called Kiverco to build a MRF, which is a recycling facility. So there is a need for companies to collaborate because they don't have all the expertise to know how to manage a type of waste and build something out of it. So this is I think, and it comes with the awareness that you were saying, either at the educational level or also at the community or society level, which we need to push.
Indeed, and nobody has all the answers. So
exactly,
we're not going to get anywhere if we don't start keep sharing knowledge. And Aditya, where do you see it from a financial point of view? Do you see more appetite on a general point? Do you see more appetite to invest in circularity principles? Is that when somebody says circular economy, is it, oh gosh, that's a bit too rad for us right now? We're just getting to grips with the energy transition and all those terms right now. Or is there more confidence building in those capital meetings?
Well, there's definitely a lot more confidence now. So I think, just to see in terms of how the circular economy has evolved over the last few years, a few years back, you had governments, set out a vision that this is what we want to achieve, whether it is diversion of waste from landfills or achieving net zero. And that vision was followed by policies, how they want to go about doing that. And then the regulation provided the framework. So now we've reached, the third step where, the regulations are in place, the frameworks are being given. So from an investor perspective, yes, there is a lot more confidence now going in and investing in the sector, because the investments are now not going in as part of, an ESG commitment. They're going in as commercially viable investments. So, all of the investments that we look at, they're not driven by ESG considerations. Yes, that's a plus, or, that's the basic DNA of what we do. But, commercial attributes of these investments are what drives us into investing. So, we see so many opportunities in this sector now. And, it's quite an exciting time to be looking at this sector and, especially in the region at this point in time.
Indeed. And Meghna, you're an entrepreneur, and you're like you've already mentioned, you mentioned several startups that you're aware of, and of course the ones that you've done yourself. So are you finding the wheels of finance and the wheels of willingness are getting more and more greased when you're having these sorts of conversations? Or where are you seeing pushback? Is it government? Is it financiers? Is it the public?
No, I definitely see more interest from the public and interest in terms of investment. But I think there's still space for government incentives, or even though we were just speaking earlier about some of these grants that have been provided to some startups. But I still believe, being an entrepreneur of 2 startups, that there is a lot more push from the government to support the new coming up companies, especially in sustainability. And in investment, there's many different programs going on. But to be honest, I've been part of some of them, and they're helping more in creating awareness, but maybe not so much financially, because of the price that are involved are not as significant as to make a difference to the company, right? And the processes are very long. So, but there's also like now funding available, through Dubai funding as well. Online, you can find so many different options. What I wanted to comment about Riyad's earlier answer is that I completely agree about the 3 Cs. I completely agree with him. I was also part of the Food for Future Summit last week, and I said the same thing during the panel. This is a collaboration, but it's end to end, from the moment of production to the moment of awareness to the consumers. And I see more and more collaborations happening, like in the panel that I took part of. we were talking about how they are collaborating between farms and production and saving energy there, to what are they doing with the waste of food. So there's companies like EcoSense Food, or there's Winnow, or collaborating with hotels, which are having the hotels and restaurants, the hospitality sector, that are having a big vision now on reducing their waste to net
Huge amount
zero.
of waste from hotels.
Exactly. But there is a lot of collaborations and partnerships. Even myself, the apps that I mentioned earlier, Recap, which is for Recycle Jazz. I'm meeting him tomorrow, and I want to promote these apps through my app. So I want to create services available, so for users to know which hotels are doing which actions, which restaurants are doing which actions, where can you buy sustainable products, where can you get sustainable services,
and this
have
is very much
all that
even
available.
feeds into having menus that give you your sustainability footprint.
Exactly. Many are doing that, and I get really happy when I see that. It's like, oh, it's so clear.
Yeah, and that's going to become part of where people decide to dine.
Yes,
I feel more comfortable going there because XYZ, and they're responsible for this, or they support XYZ animal welfare policy, and so on. It's going to become, and that's what we were saying at the beginning, wasn't it? That it's going to touch every single part of our lives to ways that we can't really imagine right now.
I see some menus that have even labels like not only the vegan, vegetarian options, but also like the gluten-free, but there's also like organic, which comes from local farms. So there's like so much that people can read about and be surprised.
It's shifting, which is wonderful. And if we look at the energy industry in particular, and the fact that we've even touched on hotel and restaurants, again, that just shows our earlier point. But if we look at the energy industry in particular, Riyad, what notable examples do you think that are happening in the energy industry that can be extracted as best cases to apply this year? What should be ramped up this year? What's working that we need to do more of?
Okay, on the energy side, I mean, you have a lot of industries here were like very energy intensive, kind of like cement industries or steel industries. And there's a regulation which has been put 2-3 years ago about a minimum of RDF, which is the alternative fuel in solid state, to be shifted from coal to this kind of fuel. You need investment, you need a change of mindset inside a company. And we saw what Aditya was mentioning before, the landfill, the tipping fees, which has been announced 3 years ago and implemented today. I think the same thing will happen with this RDF regulation, which is minimum 10% of your fuel has to come from alternative, or let's say recyclable waste. So people have no choices now, I think, and they're moving, and we see this. Yesterday, I was sitting with a German company who's really looking into the region here to develop RDF solutions, or biocompost from waste that they want to roll out throughout the country, throughout the region even. So there's a very high interest in those solutions, technology solutions, because we know that there is a source. The source is there. I mean, the waste is big, is huge. It's not recycled, as we said before. And so those companies, those energy intensive companies, are slowly shifting into this. So they're thinking about business models where they have to invest today. They'll get the benefit in 2-3 years. There's not going to be short-term returns. So,
which in itself took a bit of time to get the head around. Especially when oil prices were so strong, even after 2014, there were periods and they were very bullish, and the economic argument there for, well, let's step back and put money into something completely different and untested was very difficult, and understandably on the ROI and that security basis. Aditya, is there anything standing out from you from the energy industry that you think?
Yeah, I can give an example of an initiative we started, in January this year. So this is addressing the circularity of the energy transition industry. So basically, it addresses circular economy as well as energy transition. So we have a portfolio company which is, one of the market leaders when it comes to rooftop solar in the region, and Dubai in particular has had a very high rate of adoption on the rooftop solar side. So what we have done. We've gone one step forward and started addressing the off-grid market. So today, when you look at construction sites, you look at events, you look at many other temporary uses of power is generally by way of diesel gensets, and obviously that's not the most environmentally friendly solution that you can offer. So what we've done is, we've come up with a solution which offers you batteries instead of diesel gensets. And those batteries, basically get charged at one of the many locations that we have across Dubai using solar energy. So, we've adopted the battery swapping kind of model for the commercial and industrial scale. And, every time we run out of battery, we have a new battery pack which comes and, replaces the existing one. So, so not only are you eliminating the use of diesel gensets, but your alternative source of power is, 100% solar. So even for off-grid solutions, so which is something which was not easily available in the market currently. So, these are things, or, these are adaptations that the industry is now embracing. And, just coming back to the point I made earlier, and this is driven not by ESG, this is driven by commercial. So, the commercial solution we are offering is not only cleaner than the current alternative, but it's also cheaper. So, there is a business case for companies to adopt these kind of solutions.
And that progress can certainly be lauded, and it's, as you say, it's hard won. It's making fantastic progress. But the question is, what then happens to those batteries? Where are we at with recycling the materials of the unused batteries? And I guess that's where the true circular economy principles come in. And that's not to in any way dilute what you've said. Is fantastic. Yeah. It's amazing progress. And is, like I said, it's to be lauded. But over the long term, we're really talking about circular economy. It's, how are we recycling the desks that we're sat on, and the chairs, and the joists in the base of my chair, and where do those come from? And it's looking at carbon concrete for built construction, and where do the materials from the batteries come from, or where do they go? What's the next step? I mean, how ambitious is it to think of achieving those sorts of answers in the next 15 years? Do you think it's going to take even longer? And this is to anybody. Do you think we'll start getting answers to those sorts of questions in the 2030s, or do you think it's too soon?
I think a lot sooner. So, I'm already seeing a couple of initiatives or attempts being made to recycle these batteries, for example. So you already have lead acid batteries which get recycled, and what these gensets use is mainly lithium ion, and there are solutions available now, and these are we're very close to, I would say, commercial exploitation of these solutions. So the main process is the separation, the hydrometallurgical separation of the precious metals and the rare earths. So, I think we've reached a point, where we are not very far from, commercial viability of these solutions. The question now is, reaching that kind of scale. And I think, we've only reached that scale, or, we will reach that scale in the coming years. So, EV batteries or, lithium ion batteries on a large scale have only been adopted maybe 2 or 3 years back. So now, those batteries are still very much, within their life, or, in circulation. Yeah. And, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when we start seeing end of life batteries, we will have a solution by then, so I'm quite confident about that. Yeah.
There's an astonishing number, and I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll send it to you after this, and I'll also put it in our intelligence briefing so that the listeners can see it there, about the amount of gold that can be extracted from mobile phones. And I remember being stunned, and I went and checked the number twice because I thought perhaps it was there was a spelling mistake, but it was incredible. And it's that sort of resource regeneration that needs to happen. And politically as well, there are geopolitical reasons why reusing the materials we already have and thinking more creatively as well. Some countries have a lot, have quite a big hold on natural resources when it comes to that. And before we go into a big political conversation, and that will of course start to drive countries' needs to diversify as well. I mean, I think like you're saying on a scale point of view, where we have on a national level, where we're seeing batteries being recycled and the materials from them, and every material that we see right now, I think it's going to be longer, isn't it? Probably.
If I may just add to that point on gold, so I mean, you're right. I've read that there are some estimates today. There is more gold in landfills than there is in mines. So there are some estimates, and this is mainly electronic items. Now, I think this brings us back to the commercial viability of doing that. So yes, there is so much of gold which is there in the landfills, but for every device, gold forms a very tiny fraction of, the device. So today the challenge is extracting that gold gold or platinum or palladium, all of these precious metals in a commercially viable manner. And, I think, as more and more investment is done on the, on the technology side, we'll reach that point where, it gets. So, I mean, there are facilities globally which are doing this, basically extraction of precious metals from, our electronic devices. But yes, you need a certain scale for that to be commercially viable.
And for some, it will be a turn of fortunes when it comes to emerging markets, where some of them have had, or developing nations, some have had a lot of waste dumped on them from developed nations, including mobile phones, including electronics. And if they're able, you've literally been throwing gold away, and if they're able to start leveraging those developing nations, could be sitting on a small gold mine. They just need they just need the investor support and the talent support to get to that. So we'll see how that transpires as well. Riyad, what are your thoughts on the timeline?
Well, I like the optimism of Aditya for the recyclability of batteries. I've been working in the automotive industry a long time ago, for a long period. And at that time, we were already selling, electric cars with batteries. And the challenge is really the same as for the mobile, is really, because the battery, the way it is designed, and this is where we come to the design key element, which is how we design to make sure that we can, take out the recyclable part of it at the end of the life cycle. And today, because I'm still keeping in contact with the automotive industry, it's a big challenge to recycle batteries from EVs. It's definitely very tough because you have different layers. You have a cell and you have so many different materials that is almost impossible to do it today with the current technology. So I would say technology-wise, it's going to take some time before we find a solution which can be cost-effective, because we can do that in a lab, but to be cost-effective and to scale it up for electric cars, I think it's going to take a while before we really recycle, just to get an example of what we were talking before. But definitely, if we keep pushing and putting investments and fundings into research, then we can find solutions. And I think this is happening already, for instance, in the waste management. Before, I mean, let's take the plastics. We used to do mechanical recycling of plastic. Today we're doing chemical recycling of plastic, which is really the next step, and you get really very, very high quality plastics that you can use into the same as the petrochemical granule. So, and this was not something available 5-10 years ago. So technology, when you put the right funding in place, you can really scale up and push for better cost-effective technology that brings you the right recyclability level, I would say.
And when you have those geopolitical drivers, and as Aditya was saying as well, making it commercially viable, that volume, that positive volume should start to increase. Meghna, anything you'd like to add just before I round up on our top 5? This is such a fascinating conversation. It's a bit painful to wrap it up, but I know you all have jobs to do. So Meghna, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the aim is quite ambitious. As you know, UAE is planning to generate half of its electrical energy by 2050. 44% is planned to be from renewables, 38% by gas, coal, and 6% on nuclear energy resources. But 25% by 2030, will that be achieved? 75% even, I heard, by 2050. But I mean, there's a lot of ambition, but there's also actions being implemented that we can see today. And with within the industries that I directly work with, I see a lot of initiatives taken also by the government. So as Riyad was mentioning, now the plastic, there's going to be a ban of single-use plastic within the next 2 years. I would really like to see that. But seeing, for example, that, from the 1st of July, the supermarket bags will be chargeable. That's already a fact that it will be interesting to see the transition. But I can see also from the hospitality industry, some of them are already using solar energy. They're converting the cooking oil into biodiesel. They're doing food waste management. And as we were discussing earlier, there's more recycling system coming into place. So there is a lot of action being taken. And we're talking in 2022 about all this being implemented. So I think it looks positive.
Well, we had a similar conversation this time last year, and the tone of this conversation is dramatically more positive than that one. So that in itself is indicative of the changing sentiment, which is fantastic. Right, I'm just going to quickly, like I say, just the eye on the clock. I'm just going to quickly round up some of our top 5. I'm not going to be able to cover everything because you've all made some many excellent points. So firstly, we're looking at the loss of opportunities. So as nicely phrased, instead of looking at it as a huge negative, look at it as a loss of opportunity. Dramatically reducing waste, the push by governments is beginning to improve. Rethinking landfills we used Dubai as an example, very timely, of course. And also looking at the concept of extended producer responsibility, designing for circularity, keeping it in mind from the absolute birth of that supply chain, from the innovation, R&D, we're going further back all the way so that it can have that extended life all the way through, and really increasing that model and scaling that up. Building public awareness, number 3, massive point about, it's really a key step. Riyadh was saying it's very much at the top of the list in terms of enabling people to start thinking in a completely different way, and that filtering through with businesses, governments, academia, and so on. And we have a myriad of startups and mobile apps, 4 mentioned by Meghna, that are very relevant to this. And also, as Aditya was saying and emphasizing, that C needs to be made money friendly, essentially. It needs to be made commercially viable. It can't fall under this banner of ESG, but it can as well. But really, number 1, it needs to be commercially viable, which is really, really picking up. And then that leads to number 5, which is much more investor confidence, that the momentum is certainly there. And we had so many other points. Like I said, I was scribbling away thanks to your great comments, but we'll probably have to leave it there. I'd like to ask a rapid fire survey question. It's just a quick yes or no. And I'll ask each of you in turn, do you think that a circular economy in its truest form, so recyclable batteries from EVs, recyclable desks, these are everything in its everything in its truest form can be achieved in the Middle East or anywhere in the world by 2050? Riyadh, yes or no?
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
but probably challenging, very, very challenging, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetimes. No. Aditya, what about you?
I'm optimistic. I mean, just looking at the newer generation and, the way they have embraced sustainable living, I'm quite optimistic, so, I mean, other than yes or no, I'd say, I'm quite optimistic that, we're leaning towards, achieving, a fair bit of circularity, by 2050. Yeah.
Meghna?
Yes, I definitely believe we can. Yes. It's not only recycling, but reusing and any kind of, creating circular economy. I think we are definitely capable of achieving that.
Okay, excellent. Well, brilliant. Bit of Riyadh and I not sure what's going to happen in our lifetimes. Aditya, pretty sure, and Meghna utterly optimistic, which is brilliant. It leaves us on a good tone, and I very much hope Aditya and Meghna are right. That's where I'm going to place my bets. Thank you very much to all 3 of you. Really appreciate it. Thank you as well from the GI team, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you
so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Thanks, Meghna. Cheers.
Bye.